It's all right.
Good evening. Now call to order the October 25th school board meeting. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Andrews, Director Lissain,
Present.
Vice President Mason,
Present.
Director Mitchell,
Present.
President Winta, Student Representative Carrillo, Student Representative Parikh.
A little empty up here tonight. Okay, our first item is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohn, will you please introduce the agenda?
I'd be happy to do so. Consistent with the plans established at your 2016 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There is a segment this evening for routine business. There is a recognition item tonight. There's a segment for strategic progress reporting, one for information items. There is a segment for new business, and tonight also a segment for upcoming items and for board comments. Since publishing the agenda for this evening, two items have been or will be updated. Item 8.1, the superintendent's report, may be updated during the meeting, as is customary for our regular meetings. Item 10.2, fiscal outlook 2016-22, was revised to update the title and to upload both the presentation and updated attachments. Of course, the board may elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members. In all other respects, this agenda is as it was published, and we ask your approval thereof.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
I thought there was a question.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will move to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. The agenda is adopted. Next, we are honored to have in the boardroom tonight the Durham School Services maintenance team here. They are the first school bus shop in the state to receive the prestigious Automotive Service Excellence Award, Blue Seal Program recognition. Mr. Moore, can you please introduce our guests and give us some details on the award?
I would be happy to. I think we're going to have a couple of us speak before you tonight, but first of all, thank you for your referencing why they're here. It's quite an honor to have this award for Durham Transportation Services. And as you can see, there's a number of representatives here from all over our country, from Texas, Northern California, Las Vegas. And they spent the day out at the shop celebrating the success, because it's not just a celebration of partnerships, which is an important element of our strategic plan. And our strategic partners, obviously our transportation system is key in that, but it's more about the representation of student safety, reliability, the commitment they have to making sure that our students are well taken care of. Tonight I want to have John Pike, our transportation supervisor, introduce the Durham team. So, John.
First off, I want to thank the board and Dr. Cohn for giving us an opportunity to recognize Durham. It is a very big achievement to receive the Automotive Service Excellence Award for the entire shop. So it's not an individual achievement, it's a group achievement, and it's really good. And besides it being the first in North America for Durham, there are 18 locations in the state of Washington, automotive service places, different types that have achieved this. And Durham here in Everett is the only school bus location in the state of Washington that we can find that has this award. So it's another achievement. I'd like to introduce the technicians that we have. First off, Lonnie Young, who is the lead technician and shop supervisor. And we have Jacob Brown. We have Nick Stobie and John Hunt. And none of those names were difficult at all. So anyway, we just wanted to introduce you to them. They do a fantastic job, not only for the school district, or not only for their own buses that are used to transport our students, but they're the only mechanics that we trust with the vehicles that we use here at the district also to transport students. So they do all the maintenance on our student transportation vans and buses that the district owns too. So they do a fantastic job, and thank you very much, guys. And I want to introduce Jim Moore and bring him up. He is the Executive Vice President of Maintenance for North America. He's going to explain a little bit more about the award, more than I know about it. So thank you.
Excellent.
We'll start with Ed Gendel. Oh, no problem.
Oh, no problem. Hi, my name is Ed Gendel. I'm a Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Durham in the West area. And I got to tell you, well, first of all, thank you for letting us come here. But, you know, kind of looking at this whole experience and working with Jeff and John, the fact that the district is as excited as we are about the great work our folks have done, just it makes us feel great that you are that involved. I think it really goes to the partnership that I think continues to get stronger and stronger. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Moore here, and he's going to kind of explain how the award is awarded. So thank you.
The other Mr. Moore.
Which Mr. Moore?
We're going to tag team this a little bit. Again, thank you for letting us come here today. I mean, that's the award that they received. And just want to give you a little bit more background about what it takes to do this. It was mentioned earlier that there's 18 locations in the whole state of Washington that have received this at any given time. So if you think about it, all of the truck repair shops, the body repair shops, your car repair shops, and school buses and districts and all that stuff out there in the whole state, how many thousand is that probably, right? So there's 18 of them that have managed to achieve this. And we're, like I said, we're the first one in the school bus world. So these guys did an incredible job to pull that off. To win the award, they have to test. It's some pretty involved testing. And there has to be one person certified in each area that we happen to work on buses, whether it's electrical, brakes, transmissions, whatever. And then you also have to have 75% of the people involved in the location involved in the program actually have at least one certification. So as mentioned earlier, it's not just one person doing it. Everybody had to be involved to keep it going. And they've all made the commitment to go forward to become master certified. So if you're a master certified technician, you've received all of the awards. You've got all the testing, you've done all of it. So we have one here that's already done that. And then, you know, Lonnie's already done that, and we've got people that are just real close to it, right? So they're all going after that. So with that, so it's not just a recognition within Durham, actually, that we do this. It's also, like, again, for the whole industry that you can see that people do this. And the biggest part of this thing is that it makes the commitment to you that they're staying up to date with the latest technologies out there. It's not, I mean, if you were a great technician 10 years ago, you may not be today. So to pass these tests, they constantly evolve, they change, and they have to recertify and keep them going. That means they've stayed up to date with the latest, greatest things out there. So again, for the safety of the fleet and for all the students and for economics and for everything, it's great that they stay on top of it. So we just want to pass that on to you and let you know what it really involved to do it, and again, how proud we are of them. So thank you.
On behalf of the board and the district, we'd like to extend an enormous thank you to all of you for your hard work and also for your continuing education. That's obviously the kind of thing that we like to see here in the district, that you've continued to improve yourself and evolve as we get older. It's not just about the kids sometimes. So thank you very much. Photos? I think we're going to do a photo op with the board here, if that's okay. We'd like to bring you all up.
We can bring him back here. Why don't we swap the two of you? That's perfect.
Kids are picking on him.
Absolutely.
Okay, that brings us to our first public comment period. The school board specifically sets aside 2 times during the regular board meeting to hear from our constituents. We do this because we value public input and we want to hear and understand the perspectives they bring to the table. Dr. Cohn, are there any requests for comments during this first public comment period?
There are no requests.
Okay. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda. Dr. Cohn, would you please provide an introduction to the consent agenda?
Certainly, the board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. These include meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts, for example. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently, but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting, when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider having a broader discussion about the policy implications of any item. If any consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, the remaining items are automatically renumbered and the board takes a final vote on the consent agenda with a single motion. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has received no questions or comments, and therefore the consent agenda is presented as published for your approval.
Okay. A motion to adopt the consent agenda is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing no requests, we'll proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Okay, motion carries. That brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Cohn.
And it is my delight to go over some agenda highlights, a little bit of good news, a couple of updates, and point out some upcoming events. The header picture in tonight's report is a photo from the board's special meeting at Garfield Elementary School. This is, you may recall, Joan McCandless's classroom, where you spent some time on one aspect of your early learning work. The next slide is a quick overview of our summer school progress to graduation, which is a highlight of tonight's agenda. You'll hear a little bit about the expansion of summer school offerings for students pre-K through 12th grade, and you're going to hear about nearly 1,200 students participating in 10 programs at 10 sites. I could go through a lot more information with you, but I'm going to go ahead and save that. We're also going to hear a little bit about summer reading, supporting our literacy activities. You know that this is the second summer that we were involved in a district-wide summer reading program, and we looked for more ways to include students, and as a result saw an 11% increase in participation. Almost 6,900 students participating, and you're going to hear a little bit about that activity as well. The three-year fiscal outlook on tonight's agenda was actually changed to a little bit longer set of projections. So I think tonight, Jeff, we're looking at about 5 years or so, 4 years, 5 years. And tonight truly is going to be the good, the ugly, and the uglier when it comes to what life could potentially look like. Mr. Moore is going to go over a fair amount of significant data with you in anticipation of your legislative activities and your budget work throughout the course of this year. Also, tonight, as you all just heard, we were able to celebrate that wonderful Blue Seal program recognition. We're delighted that the Durham folks were able to be here with us, and frankly, they've been a wonderful partner in our work for a number of years. And we're delighted about the next several years that they're going to be transporting students and some of the improvements that they're going to make in the transportation structure. We got some wonderful news. One of our students, I think probably most of you are familiar with Harshu Musunari. She was recently named a 2016 Davidson Fellow Laureate for her thermoelectric research. She made a trip to Washington, D.C. in September to receive her award, which included a $50,000 scholarship. She's one of only 20 students to be honored in this particular fashion. Kind of makes you want to work on thermoelectric power, doesn't it? Okay. So we'll get to see her at a future board meeting, and we're delighted about her success. High school and beyond was this past week. We had a large turnout across the district. We actually didn't count this time, but we're absolutely certain that we had thousands and thousands and thousands of students. And if Dr. Stewart wants to give me an actual number, I'm sure we'd all be delighted. But I think there were so many people we all lost count. I will say that this year at two of the high schools, I felt like there were more people than I've ever seen. We were competing with another event on the third night, and I think it was a little less well attended than we've seen in some past years. But I want to thank our counselors, our career specialists, our success coordinators. I want to thank Becky Ballback in particular. People work all year to make this event particularly valuable for students, for parents, for kids as early as elementary school. And our objective is to help people understand that kids can go to college. Whether today they think so or not, they can, and there are resources to help families achieve that. I happen to be able to sit at Rotary I think it was the day before the series started, with one of our students of the month, and I asked whether he and his mom, who was there with him and attended high school and beyond events. They had attended twice, and I ran into them the night after, I think it was, or 2 nights after. That was their third session. So we are having the kind of effect we want, and as we continue to improve our ability to offer these, we're going to broaden that effect. So we think that's a particularly important activity and accomplishment. Just a quick note, our food nutrition department has an intern. Her name is Sarah Moore, and she produced a video highlighting the district staff's work to create nutritious meals for students and to highlight how much care, really how much love the food and nutrition staff puts into this work. You can find the video in the Spotlight section of the district website. I'm not sure it's the very first video we've ever seen in the district, but I think it's probably the first of this nature and the first on the website, so I encourage you to take a look. At this point, we are planning an early learning symposium March 4th. We plan to host a community-wide conference, and you were presented during your special meeting the rationale for the early learning work that we've been engaged in. You visited some high-quality preschool and kindergarten classroom sites, and you got a chance to talk with teachers and community members and higher ed folks and our partners in the community who help us with this work. We're planning some activities that essentially run up to a symposium to establish the extent of the partnerships that we can create and the platform that we can count on to go forward with early learning. Eventually, we'd like to be able to serve at least 900 students a year in an early learning program, and we hope this will test those waters and and provide us some input on the potential for going forward and the type of a blueprint we should be looking at for that offering. You've got a number of things coming up on your agenda. You've got a special board meeting on the 1st of November. It's a morning meeting. And then we've got a board meeting and election day on November 8th. So we'll try to keep that fairly compact so everybody can get out and watch on the big screen somewhere. And then you're going to be heading over to Spokane for the WASDA annual conference, the 17th to the 19th. You've got then another regular board meeting and another special board meeting this month. So November is typically a very busy board month. That's my report this evening. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cohn. That's excellent news about Harshu. Having seen her presentation twice, I'm still not entirely sure what the project is, but I can also say that's an outstanding scholarship. But as a parent of a senior this year, it's not going to go as far maybe as you think. Okay, that brings us to section 9.0, Strategic Monitoring Report. This evening, we get to take a look at our summer school progress towards graduation. I believe Mr. Fleckenstein is going to lead us through this presentation. We have 20 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for discussion at the end.
They're working?
Appears so.
Good. All right.
Well, good evening. Dr. Jones and Dr. Willard and I will be sharing with you tonight an overview of this year's summer learning programs and provide the board with highlights of the learning that took place across our district at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Summer school is a critical component of our district's primary focus that 100% of students graduate. The work of our summer programs is aligned to 4 of our teaching and learning strategic plan key performance outcomes. Within our summer learning programs, 3 things encompass our students' academic needs: options for enriching and extending learning, supporting on-time and summer graduation by recovering credits lost during the school year, and to provide learning opportunities to explore and innovate. Let's begin our summer overview with our elementary and middle school summer programs.
And good evening. It's exciting to be here to share the work that we did this last summer in our elementary and middle school summer school programs. Our elementary summer school program continued to expand and to improve. As you can see, over 1,100 students participated in 10 different programs across 10 school sites in elementary alone. While most components of summer school were similar to previous years, we integrated some new elements as well, and I will share more detail about each of these changes as we go along. This was our 3rd year to offer 3 programs for our elementary school students. These 3 offerings targeted different needs as described in the table during 5 weeks in July and August. In prior years, these programs have been open to students from all elementary schools, but this year they were only open to the 11 schools that do not receive Title I funds because our Title I schools hosted their own summer school programs in the belief that students were more likely to attend their neighboring school than to go across town. The Title schools offered a common instructional program that included reading, writing, math, and science for students entering 1st through 5th grades. In addition to the programs at the Title schools and the district-wide offerings, 5 elementary schools hosted their own summer school programs, targeting students not included in the district programs and focusing primarily on reading for entering 1st and 2nd graders, not yet at standard. One of our new offerings this year was Everett Ready, entering kindergarten students at Madison and Emerson who are English learners and students who had not had preschool experiences were targeted for inclusion in this program, which was intended to give students a jump start to become familiar with their new school and to learn school routines. A parent engagement component led by the ECAP family support specialists was included. We're extremely grateful to the Everett Public Schools Foundation, which provided the funding for this program, and we have already had conversations with them about expansion next year. Our summer school curriculum is built around best instructional practices. Ready Readers, ELL Summer Experience, and the Title I program were built on GLAD units. One of the strengths of summer school is the strong professional development component that helps teachers build their skills, and they then have a perfect opportunity to utilize those techniques with a smaller group of students. The active hands-on nature of summer school is also one of its benefits. Each of our district-wide programs, Ready Readers, ELL Summer Experience, and Math Camp, included field trips and on-site experiences that gave students opportunities to explore and interact. The Math Camp curriculum was completely new this year. The just below standard students invited to Math Camp typically have most of the needed math skills, but lack confidence and perseverance. The inclusion of robotics was an engaging way for students to develop that stick-to-itness that leads to success. While students were frustrated when their robot didn't perform as hoped, they were very motivated to keep working until it successfully completed the task. We were also very excited this year to be able to use the school libraries at our summer school sites for students to check out books. Students, parents, and staff overwhelmingly enjoyed summer school. These are some of the typical comments from our parents' survey at the end of the summer. Of course, there's always room for improvement. We clearly saw the benefit of hands-on experiences from robotics to the field trips, and know we need to continue to incorporate those in our summer programs. The small class sizes and individualized attention are part of what makes summer school successful. However, those small class sizes combined with the growth of summer programs led to a challenge in hiring the necessary number of staff. We need to do a better job of providing aligned information and processes for staff who are interested in working summer school. And finally, as we continue to grow our summer programs, we have to build in the processes and operational support necessary at all levels of the organization, from transportation and food services to human resources and payroll. Moving up from elementary, one of our new programs this summer and part of our growth was the development of a summer school program for ELL students from all 5 middle schools. 6th graders were targeted to help ease their transition to middle school, and 7th graders were included as well. Students participated in a thematic unit on heroism with weekly classroom visitors. One week, a nurse shared her role as an example of compassion. Another week, a firefighter was the exemplar for courage. Evergreen also offered a program for 24 students in reading, writing, and math to reduce the summer slide. And I will turn this back over to Larry to describe the high school programs.
Well, Everett Public Schools believes in each of its students, and this summer, in addition to our elementary and ELL summer programs, we also served 60 special needs students pre-K through 12th grade in our extended school year program at James Monroe Elementary, providing IEP services in academic, OTPT, communication, adaptive skills, and social behavioral skills. We are fortunate to have such caring staff provide support for our special needs students during the summer. And again, our Everett Special Education PTSA was kind enough to host a lunch for the staff who worked with our students. Shifting our view to the high school program, our secondary summer school program was located at Cascade High School this year, having previously been at Sequoia High School. By centralizing the location, we hope to provide greater access to our students, provide more space for programs, and streamline transportation routes. 2 sessions were offered for our high school students, a 6-week program and a 3-week program, depending on the recovery option or courses that they were taking to advance. Summer school also provided opportunities for students to explore and innovate. Partnering again this year with Snow Isle Tech, our students and students from neighboring school districts could take at no cost 1 of 12 courses, 2 of which were offered on-site at Cascade: biotechnology and research by design. For more personalized summer school options, online high school courses such as PE, government, and CCRS were offered for students looking to get ahead or take a class early to advance their coursework during the regular year. In both our online and Fuel Ed course offerings for credit, students demonstrated an 88% pass rate. This year we saw a 6% increase in the course completion rate for summer school, climbing up to 89%, in the 788 courses that were attended by our students. We also experienced an increase of 210 more total courses taken this year during the summer compared to last year, and an increase of 63 more credits earned this year than last year. When we look at the grade distribution in all 788 courses that were attended, we can see that only 11% of grades issued were Fs, incompletes, or no credit, or unsatisfactory. The chart also shows that 39% of the courses taken, as designated by an S or satisfactory grade, were courses for credit recovery, meaning courses that students had failed previously during the school year and are now retaking to recover the credits. We had 497 individual students participating in our high school summer program. Here you can see which students by grade level attended summer school. These are unduplicated students by percentage. As you can see, 44% of summer school attendees were high school juniors. When we drill down into the 11% of course grades that did not earn credit in summer school, we can see that of the 85 total F, incomplete, or unsatisfactory grades that were issued, the majority were earned by juniors and disproportionate to the percent participation by freshmen, meaning a higher failure rate was seen among freshmen who attended a summer school course this year relative to the percent who participated in the summer program. In this slide, you can see which students by ethnicity attended summer school. These are unduplicated students also by percentage. As you can see, nearly half of all summer school attendees were white. 20% were Hispanic Latino, 8% African American, 16% were Asian. By contrast, our ethnic distribution as a district as a whole is 56% white, 18% Hispanic Latino, 4% African American, and 13% Asian. Additional information of interest, we had 97 special education students who were registered for summer school. However, only 60 students actually attended and earned credit in our summer program. 71 ELL students participated in our summer program, and a nice celebration is that all 71 of them earned credits in the summer program. When we look deeper at the students who did not earn credit for a course they attended, we can see that in comparison to the percentage of each subgroup to the district whole on that previous slide, we see that our African American students and our Hispanic or Latino students failed more frequently relative to their percentage of the total ethnic population. This slide that you're viewing right now represents only courses for credit recovery, and that was 337 total courses for credit recovery, meaning students had failed and are now retaking them in the summer to retrieve those credits. When we look at the most frequently taken courses in our high school summer program for credit recovery, you can see that 47% of the courses were in math or science, with geometry and coordinated science drawing the two largest percentages. U.S. and world history were also frequently taken for credit recovery, accounting for 26% of recovered courses taken. English was lumped together in this graph, grades 9 through 12 combined, and accounted for 19% of the courses recovered. The data presented tonight is our snapshot of information that we will be using to refine and improve our summer secondary program for the coming school year.
So meeting students where they are is really one of our best strategies for getting students to graduate on time. And summer is still on time for our students. So we work really hard throughout the summer to make sure every student receives extra services as they need them. I wanted to share a story of one of the students who was an August grad. He was one who was having trouble attending summer school He had two jobs. I think he's still working on two jobs. And by the time we convinced him that he needed to finish up, even on his own, to take care of some credit recovery, he still had biology second semester credit recovery to finish. He had started it. He had work-based learning, which his jobs helped to build credit towards his diploma. Career choices, which is also part of that job as well, and also needed to take an online PE class as well. So he had many different pieces in place that he needed to take steps towards. And it really was August 16th where he'd made some progress on all of these but had not completed them. And our summer school program, the one that you see at Cascade, ends on August 12th. So a few days later, he decided he was ready. And so we were ready with him. And this isn't unusual. We have students who arrive at this place mid-summer, even in August, even the week before the new school year is about to begin. I wanted to share because this student was unable to share a speech that he wrote that he wanted to share at the August graduation. And it highlights one of our teachers, but there are several teachers that really, I can think of many of them where you called them, and one in particular, because it was right before the summer ended, came a half hour later from their house, which was exactly a half hour away, to drive and work on some solutions for a student. So we have teachers that are giving it their all alongside of our students. So this is his speech. Hi everyone, I hope you all are having a good evening. Just wanted to take this time to thank some people, Mrs. Jennifer Chambers, Mrs. Stewart, and Mrs. Willard for helping me through the work I had to finish to graduate. I was crying actually when he shared this with us. Also my family for always being there for me and pushing me always in life to achieve goals. I feel real honored to be the first in my family to get this far and achieve this. Thank you. So he sat quietly and never was able to share that, but after, when we were having the celebration, he handed that to us, and it was very moving. We have many students who have that very same experience. Maybe don't write a speech for us, but definitely are ready to go and have many people to thank, and we thank them for the work that they do. Our summer on-time graduation, many pieces actually help us through that process. We had home visits nearly every day. In fact, any student who received a home visit that was about to graduate did graduate. If we were able to see them and bring them to the program, those students all graduated. We had an extended summer school. So I told you summer school ended on August 12th. But I can tell you August 16th with the student I was describing and many other students came and visited my office, which became the alternative summer school. And there were many other locations that those things took place, but largely they were here. We had tutors, we had food, we had transportation. We're transportation on a dime, we called them, and they helped us pick up students as well. Student by student, every single one of those students had very different plans in place. We could not create a program that could have served all of them. It really required that we had one plan for one student and perhaps a few teachers working with one and a few with another and so forth. And many wraparound services. Students often needed drug and alcohol counseling, and we had that throughout the summer with our drug and alcohol counselor. We've had connections with jobs, which you heard from the story that I shared. College planning, motivating students to think about what's going to happen in 2 and 3 weeks. That's it when you graduate. And then many times conversations with family members about what was taking place. Many times there was a lot to find out about what was going on between the student and other family members that really got them back on board. Conversations, one with a transgender family, where they weren't ready to turn in a PE waiver because it meant something about their family. And so that conversation helped move us forward. There were many other very heartfelt conversations. So in August, we graduated 24 students. Each had a very heartfelt story. Some of the themes, not just from my section, but all of the summer programs, are really about transitions, Smooth handoffs between the school year, the summer, perhaps this extended summer program, and then the new school year. So we do have students that return to us, but we make sure they come back to us. And we spend those last few weeks of the summer not just ensuring kids graduate, but if they cannot graduate, that they're coming back with a clear educational program. Personalization, we have graduation plans for all of our students and followed up in detail. Lots of flexibility. The classes that you heard about, there are ones at our elementary schools, our middle schools, but at our high schools also. We have technology involved. We have in-person programming, hybrid programming. Those Fuel Ed classes don't just happen on their own. Our certificated teachers also support students in the classroom to make sure students have support. Capacity. We keep having a growing capacity. We moved from Sequoia to Cascade so that we could grow. Sequoia was at its gills last year. So this year, Cascade had room to grow. We had the Snow Owl program taking place there with us, and now we have more room for accelerated programs as we move forward and more kinds of credit recovery options and perhaps ways to consolidate some of our programming. And then a lot of success. Students who attended were largely very, very successful at their coursework and were able to move ahead, maybe just in credits, maybe moving ahead in terms of what they learned, but also we saw students graduate as a result. Finally, as we move forward, we're going to leverage our technology as we move forward with the one-to-one devices. We'll increase the personalization by working through our grad plans. The flexibility will refine our process for registering our credit deficient students. All of these programs help to complement our 24 credit graduation requirement, making sure students are on track. And then we'll continue to build a systemized version of ways to serve our August graduates, not just during summer school, but even that post-summer school period. With that, if you have any questions.
Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
It's great to see all the programs grow the way that they are, both in participation and the variety of programs that we're able to offer throughout the district. Directors, do you have any questions for anyone?
I have a question. For the students who failed or had incomplete, how many of those were credit recovery that it was a double failure? And I'm sure you know why they failed, but since it was a substantial number, how do we continue to help those students?
So I would say that we did have some failures in our accelerated classes, but typically most of those failures that were indicated there were repeat failures. And typically we actually mark them as NC, no credit. So it doesn't move them ahead. It's largely because students don't attend.
Okay.
So when they don't attend, they don't make progress. When they come to us, when we make enough home visits and we do those pieces, when they're with us, they really do succeed. And so we work really hard at making sure they come. One of the pieces that we do, and not just this past year, we've been working on this, is we spend a lot of time following up with students who are not attending, making phone calls, following up with home visits. Very detailed responses. I negotiate with our success coordinator specifically to take certain days out of the school year so that we can bank them so they can be there the first 2 weeks of summer school. And all they do is they contact students and they work through the list of students that they enrolled and they make sure that they're there. So a lot of effort is put into having them there.
So very impressive. Thank you.
I have a question regarding that as well. Usually during the summer, there may be transportation issues. Do we provide any kind of assistance for those students that may have transportation difficulties, i.e., there's no school bus or...
We do have school buses, though. So that is something we've had for the last few years. So, and in fact, we only had one bus basically for each school to bring their students in. But this year we had 2 bus routes per high school. So there was a lot more availability in terms of the transportation. We had a whole center set up to support the transportation the first day of summer school, and there was lots of follow-up. So if there were questions about the bus routes, if there were buses that didn't show up on time, there was immediate follow-up. And having been there, At summer school, the first few days, there were some questions about, my bus didn't come to this corner, what do I do? And there was immediate follow-up for those students. So a lot of detailed planning, a lot of logistics. The transportation department was very, very supportive in that way.
Do we make, and I'm sure we do, with making contact with families that might assist their students in making sure they're there, especially those students who fail twice and get themselves in a predicament of not having enough credits for graduation, you know, because they failed a subject twice.
We do. We call and we follow up. And then the success coordinators, their school year, their year of work starts the day right after summer school. It ends on a Friday. Their work starts on a Monday. And even though they may have been there a large part of the summer, their first job is to do follow-up for each of those students.
I hand it to success coordinators because I know how detailed and involved they are, and counselors too, and even some of our staff members who actually wake students up to make sure they're on their way to classes.
Yes, we called and woke up students. There were many. I personally made some of those calls when it was a student in my realm. So there was a lot of follow-up. There is also sometimes miscommunication that takes place at the home. I'm looking at Joyce across from me. There was a student who had told their mother that they had already graduated. So at that point, when there was a home visit, that was a conversation to be had, and we got the student back on track because that was a surprise to the mom that they had not graduated. And I wish I could say that was the only time, but that does happen. So hopefully we catch those, and then we work on getting them back, and then we get them back on track.
I have a question when you mentioned that there was an impact on all aspects of the system, from human resources to transportation to payroll. As far as human resource, I do understand there's a shortage of substitute teachers or teachers just in general who may wish to take off in the summertime, and then you have to get those teachers available for summer school in a sense. What can we do better in the future as far as human resources aspect to ensure that, you know, we have enough early on teachers available for summer school? What can we do to assist in that effort?
I think it was confusing for applicants this year because there were so many different summer school programs and they were being hired by different people and the hiring processes were slightly different. And so I talked to several candidates who said, well, I already talked to somebody, wasn't that you? And so there was just some confusion, I think. And I think we can do a better job with standardizing and systematizing our processes. But it was also difficult to find the inadequate number of staff because not everybody wants to work summer. So probably getting out a little earlier and being sure that teachers are much more aware of the opportunities would be helpful as well.
Okay. Director Andrews or student representative, any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for the thorough, detailed information. That brings us to summer reading program. It looks like we're covering summer tonight on the agenda. Dr. Stewart and I believe Lois Craig and Mark Smith are going to walk us through our last summer's program.
So good evening. Last year when I gave this report, I told you to remember a number. I wonder how many of you remember that number. So it was 4,367. And so it's with great excitement, there's a team of us who's going to give you an update on a number. So the number I want you to remember this year is 6,848. So keep that in your head, 6,848. So last year I said the number was the size of a small city, 2 Jackson high schools. This year our city's growing, and now we're up to 3 Jackson high schools. So if you can imagine 3 Jackson high schools filled with students and all those students reading. So keep that number in mind. So this evening, Lois Craig, Mark Smith, and I, we're going to go through the objectives. And so you might say, why do you have Lois Craig and Mark Smith? Lois Craig, you don't see her often throughout our district or up here giving presentations. You do see her in lots and lots of classrooms throughout our district. She's a literacy facilitator, and she is supporting teachers all over the district. And she's really been glue, especially with the secondary program, as far as meeting with the principals and the librarians. And it's kind of my weird way of honoring her. So she's going to present tonight. So she's probably saying she would rather have a Starbucks card, but instead she gets to spend a little time up here. And the same with Mark Smith. He's a librarian at Cedarwood Elementary, and there's a direct correlation from the partnership that the principal and the librarian have together with the results, and we'll see that tonight. So Mark's been a big advocate of this program. He's going to talk about that at the end. And again, I want to honor him tonight. And that's why I have him here, because he consistently gives us good feedback to make this program better. So tonight, the three of us, we're going to review again the purpose with you. I want to summarize again those key research findings that I summarized last summer, because they're really the foundation of our program. Lois is going to explain the components of the program at each of the levels, and then again showing that connection to college and career readiness, and communicate the additional support that we've got for the program this year, highlight we have another significant community partner, and then show the results. So, and then at the very end, of course, present to you the next steps. So really, what's the purpose? So we talked about last year really eliminating the summer reading slide, and we'll talk about that research here in the next slide. But also, what we've done is we've asked our sixth graders to read, the students in fifth grade going to sixth grade, to read a common book called Wonder. And the book really focuses on empathy and really talking about the impact of harassment and bullying in the middle school. So that's a common read for all of our students. Also, just creating a community-wide culture of reading. And when you talk about culture, I've talked to you before that one of the first criteria in the AWSP rubric for our principals is creating a culture of teaching and learning. And that is, this whole thing about culture is difficult. Creating a really positive culture in a school, creating a positive culture in a community. So it's taken us a while to build these results, to create this culture, but we're not going to give up. And we saw progress this year, and that's going to continue to be our focus. But most of all, what we're trying to do is give our kids a lifetime gift, the gift of the ability to read, but also what I call is a gift of access. So it's just like the device. You know, it's about a gift of access. That's what reading is, the gift of access. So these pictures, if you take a look at these pictures, you can see how these incentives mean a lot to our kids. There, the picture on the left is Celia O'Connor Weaver, and a student who actually won one of the, or received one of the Kindles. The one on the right, look at all the students. There's a picture at Heatherwood Middle School. The librarian, again, I'm going to keep saying librarian, really spent a lot of time marketing this program. This next slide, I really wanted to show you this because we've heard the saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So when you look at this, can't you just see the thinking that's going on in these young children's minds? I mean, doesn't it just make you wonder, what are they thinking? And I thought these two pictures, I put these in there, number one, because one of them is a child of two of our teachers in our district. The other one is a sibling of one of our students. But really what this does is this supports what you heard just last week in the early learning presentations. And I thought this would be a missed opportunity if I didn't actually show this. So going to the research. So the research really captures what we're focusing on in the school district. So you see the achievement gaps that we see in our district. You hear about poverty. So if you take a look at some of those bullets, and these two slides are the exact same ones I used last year because I want to make sure that people understand that this program is connected to research. But a couple of them, especially if you take a look at that fourth bullet about middle and upper income children's skills can continue to improve while lower income children's skills do not. How about this one? Reading as a leisure activity is the best predictor of comprehension, vocabulary, and reading speed. And then our whole emphasis, especially with Dr. Jones' help, has been about the third graders who can't read on grade level are 4 times less likely to graduate by age 18 than a proficient reader. And then the second to the bottom, 99% of the parents think that 99% of parents think children their child's age should read over the summer. So parents support that, but parents continually tell us it's very, very difficult sometimes to get their kids to read during the summer. And then this slide right here, just about the achievement gaps, the widening of achievement gaps of students of lower versus higher socioeconomic levels. So again, research-based program. So it's important, again, this slide highlights the significant literacy connection to the Common Core state standards, especially in the areas of comprehension and vocabulary. And you've heard us say over and over that these are college and career standards, and if you think of these standards as a destination, and we want our students to be ready without the need for remediation, and reading is progressively integrated throughout the destination. Upper level thinking skills are required to be successful in both college, career, and life, and so it's just absolutely necessary that our kids have the access and ability to be really proficient readers. So the key components of our summer reading program. So last year what we did is that we stopped at all of our principals' meetings and we invited our principals and our librarians together, had separate meetings also with our librarians, and we asked for input. And they gave us great input on what can we do, because we always want to make this program better. So we spent a lot of time having meaningful conversations, and Mark's going to talk about, again, what are some ways we can make this better. So also the librarians brought in feedback from their teachers and from students, so it was important. And then also interviewing some parents to see what are some ways that we can make this program so it's easier accessible, so students from all places throughout our district can have access to books. And then also just finding out a way to have students accountable for what they've read. So now I'd like Lois to come up, and she's going to talk about the specific components for each level.
Good evening. How's everyone doing today?
Great.
Great.
Awesome. Well, today I wanted to talk to you about what we did to get these information into the hands of all the kids. And I'm going to do it by levels. So each child, I know you can hear me, I have a big voice.
Lois, we're going to need you to be at the mic here, right here, yeah. And then just
Remember, it records.
it records,
Lois.
and then you got to hit this right here. Okay.
So first of all, what we did this year, as Joyce went out and as we looked at different SIT programs, we discovered that this piece of art that was here was created by a middle school child, would just really encompass the whole idea of coolness in reading. And so we were able to connect with that person and say, could we use this as our label, as our go-to for everything that we advertise? And this student was generous enough to say, I would love that to happen. So that is a piece that embedded into every one of our brochures that we had. This year then, last year we had started with a booklet and it was kind of complicated, so we made a brochure at every single level, starting with these little two folds that kind of make a try thing. For kindergarten this year, working with early learning and some of the kindergarten nights, we had this available for every kindergarten child that had been registered so that parents would know over the summer you have this possibility to read with your child. And we looked at minutes. So inside these little brochures was a chart that tracked every single day in the summer and allowed parents the opportunity to sign it and record the minutes that they had. So that was with kindergarten, to bring that new little learner into our system before they'd even actually step through the doors. The first grade brochure was very, very similar to the kindergarten one. Again, it was that partnership with the parent and the student working together, sitting closely, reading together, and tracking the minutes. One of the things that we did for incentives for these were those kids that read a certain level of minutes, a certain amount of minutes, would receive a wristband. And then the next level was a wristband with their name published in the Everett Herald, which came out last week, I believe, the 18th. And then the third one, if those kids that read more than almost 1,200 minutes, they were in a name, their name was put into a drawing at their school for a Kindle. So that was received amazingly well. So kindergarten and first grade, it was about the minutes that you worked together and read together with people in your family, building this great partnership. First graders also, kindergartners that were going into first grade, received these brochures then before school was out. And that was the same also for the brochure. They all look the same, all look alike, but grades 2, 3, 4, and 5. But this focused, moved a little bit more to student responsibility by, with the help of Dr. Cohn, who had established this awesome, solid partnership with the Star Renaissance Learning people. Then our IT department, our LMS department, was able to make sure every child had access to be able to take an accelerated reader test over the summer anytime that they had internet access. All they had to use was their student ID number. So that was an amazing partnership. So kids would be able to read and take the AR test, and that was the incentive program for grades 2 through 5, that the kids could record the book that they'd read and the points that they had earned. And it was laid out in terms of grade level and reading ability and how many points you should have. But again, the incentives were very fun. They were, I'm making sure that I have this one right for the incentives, were the wristband, your name in the paper, and the ability to be part of the Kindle drawing. Elementary. Then we moved to the middle level. And this year for our middle level, their brochure invited all the 6th grade, incoming 6th graders, to be part of the middle school brochure. The year before we'd made a separate one for 5th graders going into 6th grade. This year we put it all together. Again, the 6th grade, as you heard Dr. Stewart say, read One Book Wonder, bringing up the idea of empathy and bullying and harassment that sometimes does occur when you start moving into this middle level. But the 6th grade also was part of the same kind of activities, accountability that the 7th and 8th graders had. The 7th and 8th grade read from a list that was connected with their ELA classrooms, and then had the possibility of working on some different activities to show that they've been able to read. Again, their gifts were gift cards, name in the paper, and another Kindle drawing. Then finally, your high school, these became customized for the needs of the high school. Some of the high schools decided, I would just like one book for our grade level to read, that way we could have deeper discussions. Some decided we would like to have a choice, because this is about summer reading. Some decided I would like to have them complete one required and some other choices. But it was customized, and every one of these was a deep, deep connection with the librarian who had gone to their team. What do you guys want? In addition, they made sure that all advanced pathways also had books to be able to read, including the new capstone, including the Everett Community College or UW English, all those kind of things. In every case, our librarians have been the glue to hold it all together. So I'm going to turn it back over to Joyce.
Thank you, Lois. So we also expanded our partnerships this year. So in the past, we talked to you about working with a number of different groups, but this year we also partnered with the YMCA. So for the high school incentives, the YMCA gave a membership for each of our high schools, and that was a big deal for our students. So we're going to continue to do that. Dr. Lancaster is working closely with our PTAs, and that's a project that she's planning to partner with them this next summer, so we're excited about that, Dr. Lancaster. We also tried to do a better, or we did do a better job of communicating using our Blackboard Connect messages. And for the first time ever, we invited a middle school student to assist us at elementary school, and we hope to expand that program next year because it was very successful. So the teachers do a really good job in the springtime, again, working with the libraries and communicating ways that they can help really inspire their children to read during the summer because, again, parents tell us it's a difficult thing to do. So Lois talked about this AR support. This was a big deal for our school district. I don't think that happens anywhere else throughout our country. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, in addition to the AR reporting system that we use this summer, we're also putting it on our progress reports for our students that just indicate whether they participate. Again, this is an awareness to parents that it's a communication tool that this is important. It's new in our district, but it's important. So this is just a message we got from Leslie Moore, who works closely with us throughout the year and partnering with from the Snow Isle libraries. And again, not only our own school librarians, but the Snow Isle and Everett Public Schools, they meet with us in the spring, and we do this dual partnership where if our kids participate in their programs, they can count those books for ours, and if they participate in ours, they can also count for theirs. So she wanted to show some of the statistics here just to show you the strong partnership that we do have. She made an effort to try to get to every single one of our schools last spring and present at our schools about the opportunities through Snow Isle libraries. Most of these are Central and South Region schools. And then if you look at especially the last bullet, she wanted to highlight the highest participation and finisher rates were with the school districts that implemented Explore Summer as part of their summer reading program. So a way of telling us that connection is important. So results, here we go. Look at those faces of all the students. And here are some comments from some parents. I'm not going to read every one to you, but you can tell one showing the appreciation for wonder. Mostly it was about the conversations, but again, this one up in the right-hand corner telling that it's still difficult. This parent saying, I still struggle with getting my kids to read during the summertime. And here we have the elementary results. So you can see, again, lots of progress. If you take a look in the right, the change, some double digits, some single, but the fact that we are making progress, and that's huge. Here's a middle school and high school. And again, I can tell you the correlation is that partnership with the principal, the librarian, the communication they do to the parents, their visibility, the incentives they have, I mean, the assemblies they have also, it just makes a difference. But we will, Sally, Larry, and I continue to work with our principals on strengthening this. And here's your number you were supposed to remember, 6,848. Like Dr. Conan said earlier, that's 11% gain. In the right-hand corner, you see our first ever student volunteer, Becca. So we're going to continue to invite middle school students to especially help us at the elementary. So there are lots of pictures of celebrations you really need to see. These are only happening this month, and we don't have our DRA data. Otherwise, we're going to try to include a slide, but we don't have that. They still have until the end of August to do their finish their DRA testing. This just came from Deb Payne. She really wanted us to include some of the high school pictures so you can see not just at the elementary, but there's middle school, down at the bottom, Everett High, all the administrators up there making a big deal out of the students who participated. And then before we do next steps, I want to invite Mark up just to have Mark share his reflections and talk about, from a librarian's point of view, what would be some great next steps before I give the summary next steps for the whole presentation. So Mark?
Thank you very much. So as elementary librarian, I got to talk to the kids before they went off on their summer vacations, and we worked a lot with the teachers as well. And the teachers meet one-on-one with the kids to set their goal based on their STAR tests for AR testing. One of the biggest feedbacks we got, and we're still getting, Dr. Cohen, is these parents and the kids loved having AR at home during the summertime. And that really, I mean, they're still talking about it. Are we going to have her back this year? So that's one of the high points for sure, is having kids have access at home when they can't make it to the library. But one of the things because the previous year we had decent participation, and I felt like actually at our school we would have even more participation. And so I was asking some of the students, because I figured, what's the deal, especially with the level 3s and 4s, like getting the drawings and everything else. And one of the things that started showing up is that, yes, they appreciate AR, but that also meant there was a lot more accountability. And so the year prior, they just had to record a summary of the book, which technically they could get from a book jacket, and the parents could sign. And so when they turned those in, all they had to do was make sure that they had those booklets. If not, they had to print them off, and that was a lot of work, so these booklets were huge. And now with the simple brochure, it was great. But again, it got me thinking, why was our participation not quite as high as I thought? And that was one of the reasons, is that the kids who loved or who were already used to taking AR tests as part of their habit, they completed their challenge, and some of them told me, yeah, in 2 weeks in the summer, I already meet my challenge. And the goal was at Cedarwood, the goal was to blow your 100% goal away. And that was, so we talked about that a lot. And then the kids who didn't quite have that habit formed yet, they struggled a little bit more. And so one of the things that I think is going to be a big, big benefit for next year is that, the kids, this habit's already started. They know AR, again, if we can get during the summer again, they know that's going to be part of it. They're going to see that and be reminded of that on the elementary progress report. So I think that's going to be huge for parents to remember, oh yeah, we got to get that reading. And having a son in kindergarten and doing the minutes, I was like, because when we initially talked about kindergarten, it was actually going to be double that amount of minutes. And then we're thinking, well, maybe for kindergarten, let's maybe cut it in half. And even with that, with my own son, it's like, come on, you're behind, and you're my son. I'm the librarian. You got to step it up, buddy. But he got into it, and he was actually taking some AR tests as well. So I think, and I started talking to some of my students, just asking some of their feedback. And one of the things that what happened to some students is they lost their brochure, and even though they could print it, they might not have quite remembered the exact range that their goal was. So some suggestions that kids had is, well, if they've got this access, let's create some spreadsheets on a Google document, have the teacher actually have the goal shared with them, and then that student could then share that goal with the next year's classroom teacher when they know who the teacher is. Because that's one of the other issues we had with teachers is some were able to work with students to kind of figure out, okay, well, you lost this, let's go back and figure it out. Some teachers didn't have as much patience, but if the kids could share it with their classroom teacher on Google Docs, teacher looks at it and goes, oh, there's your goal. We don't really need the brochure after all. And then since teachers had access to the reports, it really made it a lot easier. But I think between the students perhaps creating something that's shared at home that they could share those documents, making sure that incoming kindergartners, they all receive the summer brochure and are just told about it. And then we also talked about a Connect Ed call. Maybe the first day of summer, and then maybe halfway through the summer, Connect Ed to all families that says, remember about that summer reading brochure if they've been on vacation or whatever. So, and those are some of the ideas that some of our kids came up with as well. So, but the celebrations, and that's something that I need to revisit in June is, hey guys, remember that awards assembly that you guys were just loving? And we bought some additional books. We had some visiting authors. We bought some books. So we raffled off books, but we also raffled off some tablets. So again, thank you for the Everett School District for supplying the wristbands and the working with the Herald. But I think reminding kids of the celebration, parents being reminded of the progress report, I think we could only hope to have a greater number of participants. But it was just a really exciting, and again, to bring them back to the assembly, the kids just loved it, the parents loved it, and so I think just to prevent that summer slide, I think it's just a wonderful thing that the Everett School District is doing.
So again, Mark and Lois, thank you for all your support and thank you for being here. So next steps, Mark said some of them, just going and getting feedback from our students, our parents, our teachers, reading specialists, and librarians, because that's how we're going to get better. And then ensuring that our students in their summer programs are taking their AR tests. Dr. Jones talked about, and Mr. Fleckenstein, about the number of summer programs, but not all of our students were taking tests. They're reading the books, so we have to ensure that happens. And just continue those partnerships with the public libraries. They really like working with us. And assisting our parents, like we said in that one quote, or I showed you in that one quote, it's a challenge for some of our parents to get their kids to read. And I'm hoping Dr. Lancaster can work miracles and help us work with our PTA and expand the partnership with our early learning partners too. So questions for our group? Comments?
Thank you. Directors, do you have questions?
I would just like to say thank you so much for this program. This is fantastic. One of the things that I found out as the summer came for my son and my nieces especially, I forced them to go to the library every week. We would walk down the street and go to the library and bring books back. And then, they'd have to turn them back in and write a report to me. So that was kind of fun. I kind of enjoyed that because I would ask them, never read the book. They would read it. So at least they wrote down their report. But I think this is fabulous, and I'm glad you're really going after using an opportunity for like the middle schools to focus in on one particular subject matter, like bullying or things like that help prepare them for the next school year in middle school, especially those new students coming in, as well as the other kids in middle school. They have a topic that they're all learning about. And also for high school, making it age appropriate for them. It can only get better, and I foresee that it's going to get better and continue to grow. And I'm so glad we have our partnerships with the local libraries. maybe one thing is to require that the parents also pick out a book and read it too. Might help, but you never know. Parents are kind of busy with this thing called work. Don't understand that, but it's important. But thank you so much for the hard work that you guys have done it. And I'm so glad we're doing this. I really think it's important for kids to focus in on reading, and it does prevent that summer reading slide. So thank you for your hard work, everybody's hard work. And I thank you very much for mentioning that. And it's always good to hear good things coming out. And that focus, you know, one thing, it allows the kids who did the artwork, you know, an opportunity to say, hey, they used something of mine. You know, you get other kids involved, and I'm sure every year when you do that, or you make it a competition, so to speak, and, you know, having kids do that and keeping them throughout the summer, give them something else to look forward to, maybe an ice cream soda or something, who knows. But it's great. Thank you so much for your hard work.
Thank you. Other directors or any student perspectives?
I just want to say thank you also, and to Mr. Smith and Dr. Jones, the other Dr. Jones, for letting Becca volunteer this summer. She had a great experience, and for the leadership conference, it happened right before school for the leadership of the district, and the presenters were talking about customer service and the skills for workers that they're looking for, and Becca said, Mommy, I've got customer service from this. You know, working with the kids and the parents. And I think the thing that she really was impressed by was the access to the student numbers for the incoming kindergartners, that the siblings of the new kindergartners would go to the Cedarwood Library. She would ask them for the number. They didn't know, oh, well, I have it here. What's your name? And just how proud the kids were to learn that number. But Director Lassane, I will admit that as a hardworking mom, I had a large excuse for years to not read, but since the summer reading challenge last year, I have read more since the beginning of last summer than I probably had in the 15 years previous. So it's pretty cool. And so I think that there is opportunities for parents as well. But thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions. First is, can you describe, were there activities that the middle school did to follow up on the book Wonder, like school-wide activities, or was it individual classrooms, or
I'm going to
what
have
was the
Lois
follow-up
come up
on
and
the
talk
day?
about that, because they had different activities. In fact, I think some of them are displayed when we have a break. If you want to go in the back, we display them in the back of the boardroom. But
Each classroom and sometimes whole grade levels would determine what they would be doing, anything from some seminar kind of ideas about how did this affect us, how do we see this change, everything from what was a famous, special quote that you remember and how can this relate to our school, always trying to get this idea of wonder tied back into how is this going to impact how we work as a culture in our school. So they tried many opportunities like that. And then the high schools, I mean, it wasn't just Wonder, but each case there were, depending, the middle school and high school had different activities that they could do with the books that they had chosen to read. So what we have on the back, on the black butcher paper back there, are some of the things that were collected from Jackson High School kids that turned in a few things to say, here was something I want to remember from the book that I had read. And so there were different opportunities, from creating cartoons to just going deeper into an analysis. Your high schools and middle schools also had the opportunity to take AR tests and get points for that way too. And that's a practice for some kids that they're used to, and moved it forward into the high school. Again, that was another awesome partnership with moving that AR practice into our high schools. Most of our middle schools had it, and made sure all of our middle schools had it this summer. I don't know, did that answer? And Mark?
Oh, I do want to add, it was great that the Everett School District provided every 6th grader with a copy of Wonder that they could check out from the library and that was returned. But I can honestly say they definitely have accountability, because we had some kids who returned their books. They came back to check them out again because they forgot to cite some of their examples. So we knew they were being used at the middle school grade level. So that's something good for the elementary librarians to remind them that, hey, these books are going to be used throughout the year in middle school, and it's going to be something that have that common language that, if there is some bullying going on, everyone, can refer back to Wonder and And so we think it's great that they're actually citing evidence and that they, they can each have their own copy of the book when needed.
Did you have two others?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Are we able to track participation by income level? I'm just wondering, like, how many of the low-income students and parents we're reaching?
I think there's a lot we can do as far as data with this program. You know, now we have 2 years of data, so we're also trying to track it to our summer school programs. So how are the students doing? So some of the summer assistant principals are showing their data, and they're going to do it in their school reviews, saucers. But there's more work we need to do, but yes, we definitely can. There'd be no problem doing that.
Yeah, could be interesting.
So what we're really trying to do is get the DRA data for each of those students who participated and show that data in the saucers. And we had hoped, like I said, to have it here tonight, but again, because the window doesn't close to the end of October, they still had a week from when I uploaded this. But there's a lot more. I see this really growing.
And my last question is just kind of out of the blue, but I was talking to some coworkers the other day who are in their late 20s, and they were both saying they never read a novel. They never read a book. I was like, because I remember, well, my life has just been reading, and, as a teenager, it was like transistor radio and good novel through the entire summer. But I know a lot of young adults do not read, and I'm just wondering if there's any research out there or any sort of studies that are showing, is it an effect of social media? Is it just technology that people are reading less?
I think we'd have to do research. I can't answer that for sure. I do know I see it as a developmental thing almost with students that I think Mr. Fleckenstein and I talked about his own daughter, that you think they aren't reading, and then suddenly they get hooked, they get linked into something, and then they take off. And that's the same with some students. It isn't until after they graduate that they get connected to books. So we'd have to do more research to really be able to answer that question. But
I'm not asking you to. I just was wondering if there was any sort of, if you were aware of anything.
I think really aligning it to kids' interests, find out what their interests are, and getting them connected to that with books, and I've seen that be highly successful.
It seems like this program would open that door for sure. Yeah.
You want to respond?
Yeah. So one of the things we do too is, and we show this during the summer, like in June when we're introducing the program. So, but there's definitely a point to make sure that kids are finding books they're interested in, and that's why we like to have some graphic novels for some of those kids who aren't quite into chapter books yet. But we try to just make sure our libraries are well stocked. We also show them that any book you want. So we have some ebooks that we started last year with Cedarwood. So we now have over 400 ebooks that kids can check out from home, on vacation, wherever, and all of them are AR testable as well. But we also show them Snow Isle, and that I have kids quiz me, give me a book, type it in, see all the options. Oh, there's an audio book, but look, here's an ebook. You don't even need to go to the library. You can just download it, read it from your tablet or computer. So number one is making sure kids can find that book that hooks them, or hopefully a series to really get them rolling. But also giving them that access, and that's the other thing I wanted to compliment the district, is making sure that every school has a library, school library they can go to, as well as a Snow Isle in every public library. But I mean, as Mrs. Mitchell can attest to, her daughter was very busy in our school library with the number of patrons coming in and checking out books, and just how busy it constantly was. And again, that will just continue to grow. So these kids, even if they don't have access at home, they can still come to the libraries to take AR tests and try to complete their goal. But they have access to lots of different ways to read books, and we try to encourage not just the library, but look at the digital community as well, and there's lots of opportunities there.
Okay. Any last thoughts or quick questions? Go ahead.
So I noticed that a trend was that the program isn't as popular in high schools, and I know one of the reasons is that a lot of students don't know what happens with the projects they do, as in the reports or the picture and the summary they have to do on the book. So, like, does it depend on the teacher, or what happens to those projects? Because a lot of students just don't turn them in.
You hit it right on the nose. That is very true. And in some cases, the kids are like, what's going to happen with this? Why am I doing this? So we're constantly looking at ways that we could say, what is some way that would be kind of cool or more engaging, that kids could talk about the books they read, and maybe it's a blog format or something where kids could get feedback instead of, I did a paper pencil, we have some things displayed, okay, now what? Just so, how could we get into more discussion? But as you, Director Andrews, as you had said, you know, this lessened as the kids get, you know, in their 20s or whatever. Well, we're seeing that trend also, middle school, high school, and then it's kind of tapering off, and for a variety of reasons, but we need to just keep working for that.
Remember those pictures of the little ones? We're starting with the little ones and building all the way up.
So I think for me a related question is incentives. I've heard you talk so many times about how excited kids are to have their name published in the newspaper. And we're so grateful for the Daily Herald's participation in the project. I'm curious whether or not we're finding that there are some other incentives for hitting certain levels, or random drawings of kids that are hitting certain levels, or other kinds of things that seem to stimulate interest or activity in the program at elementary, middle school, high school.
So we asked the students last year to help us with the incentives. So each of the, especially at the middle and high school, we asked the librarians to give us ideas. So they went out and they asked students, and we based the incentives this year on students' input. So for example, the Y membership, that came from students. They also told us, don't bother getting the wristbands for us. What they'd really like is chocolate. We heard that a lot. But so anyway, they like gift cards. So in order to be able to do this, though, we need more partners. And that's why I'm glad PTA is going to help us. So we're going to go back again, Dr. Cohen, we're going to have the librarians go back to the students, because they have to be relevant to their lives. And we need more partners. So the Kindles are provided by Everett Schools Foundation, the membership by the Y. We get a lot of people donating the cards, but we would have to get more sponsors to be able to provide some of the incentives that the students want.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for all the information. It's great to see the program grow.
Thank you.
So, and thank you for your work. At this time, we're going to take a 15-minute break. Let's see, that would put us at, we will come back at 6:12. Plus fiscal year outlook, 3+ year fiscal outlook, and sort of help us understand what the legislator may or may not do.
May or may not
Take
do.
it away.
Okay. Thank you very much. Tonight, I think we are going to focus a little bit on, as you just stated, how in past years, for our objectives, we've had a little shorter vision about what may or can happen, and I think you'll see that we have a much more uncertainty. I think we have a high degree of confidence through these objectives that the right things are likely to happen, and they'll be jumbled, but we have to pay close attention to make sure they're done in the right order. And that's more or less the focus of the meetings without reading these lines one by one. So I want to first flash back to what we said last year and how it more or less panned out, and then talk about what the key points are going forward. I think I want to talk a little bit about levy volatility. So there's an informational, educational component of what the levy can do, and then we'll talk about the 3 different models and the variances between the models.
Lift the mic up a little bit, will you please?
Turn it up?
Just lift it up a little.
Lift it up a little. Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. I'll move over a little too. And then we'll summarize. I'd rather use this. Okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you. So last year we talked about the difficulty of projecting out multiple years, and that we were the first year of a 2-year biennium. This year, of course, it's completely different. We have not only a 2-year outlook for the biennium, but they're trying to solve a problem that'll likely lay out over 6 years. So as it states, our vision is murky at best. We also talked about how there were 2 main variables when we constructed the projections last year, and they were 3-year projections. One was the levy cliff and how that might affect us in future years. The second one was will the voters support our bond and levy in April? The first one, the legislature did not relieve us from the concern of the levy cliff. However, collectively, we've built sufficient fund balance to guard against that and protect and create a buffer. Secondly, we were supportive. We're greatly supported by our voters in April, and that makes a significant difference for our students, as much of our presentations lately have been a celebration of that. Finally, I think I've already talked about this, but the levy cliff is becoming less significant because we're prepared for it with a one-year gap. We have sufficient fund balance, but more importantly, what's going to come into play is how are they going to balance with the big rock of employee compensation and how that connects to what they might do with the levy, as you'll see. So as we begin to look ahead, rather than saying what we know and what we don't know this year, we're going to talk a little bit about what our key focuses need to be. So we have increased fund balance, as I mentioned, to a sufficient level to brace against the levy cliff. We also know that if the legislature for some reason doesn't address it, then we're going to have to make the full cut in the second year. And that, as I mentioned, the risk associated with the legislative response to McCleary really overshadows the cliff. It's a bigger issue to look at the whole package that's coming down in terms of a showdown. And that's the second point, is the legislative showdown really is mixing in the full funding of basic education, as I mentioned, predominantly employee compensation. Also at play, and we don't talk about it, is the additional staffing units required by I-1351. So McCleary laid down a certain level of staffing units, and 1351, if you remember, almost doubled that and wrapped around more class size reductions as well as more school support employees. Also with that, we know McCleary does not require a reduction in local levies. However, there is such a strong connection within the equation. Not only are they talking about reducing it as we have in the past from 28 to 24%, but also going down as low as 10%. So OSPI has taken a look at all the data, the studies before us, and they have calculated that by 2023, our state would have $4.4 billion more committed to education, and that includes 1351. It includes all of the McCleary elements, and that is a significant number for them to find resources for. And finally, timing is everything as we look forward. Doing the right things in the wrong order can still impact school districts. Number one, lowering local resources before and not holding harmless us in the future. So what is that OSPI? I think there's a link on your website if you want to go look at the 9-page summary document. But it does include all of 1351. It adds additional categorical program hours. It looks back at the technical compensation technical working group. It includes those salaries as suggested by them. It includes 10 professional days for teachers and other school staff, health benefits. It uses the current levy formula to apply new resources, and you'll see an example of that. But it also says at the end, what you'll need left is the 10% cap on levy. Some of them suggest that that's really related to employee compensation, and it might be 15 for the other enrichments that you might do related to athletics, etc. And then it simplifies the formula by eliminating the per pupil inflator. So that's just one model out there. What it looks like, and if you look on that report, here's an example of where the $4.4 billion would go. The current 16-17 is our class size ratios, and when you start seeing where 1351 makes a difference, it more or less starts in 21-22 and 22-23 when you start to see those other class sizes go down below what McCleary had called for. Again, with the initiative being more than 2 years old, we don't know how the legislature will respond, but this is OSPI providing a plan that implements everything. So timing is everything. This diagram shows that over time, we count on our levy growing by a couple million, 2 to 3 million a year. And that's how we maintain pace with our local contractual commitments is how we also deal with inflationary costs and also provide added program. The key to this 6-year period is that as the state begins to phase out local funding in a hold harmless environment, you would end up with a net sum zero here. You would have an equal and offsetting amount of new McCleary funding coming in to the system in a right way that it wasn't restricted from dealing with what you're phasing out. What I mean is 80% of what we have right now from the levy is paying for employee contracts and the obligations within those contracts. And for the new money to come in, it has to assume the obligations of those contracts or relieve them of that for it to be a hold harmless as we move forward. That's pretty complex when you think about that, looking at that. Not only that, but as we look at some of the strategic initiatives that we have going forward, and to truly have McCleary have more than just a break-even effect on public education, it also needs to have a greater level of enhancement. So we need to do better than this diagram, which is a hold harmless diagram.
Going back to that diagram, if the levy funds for 80% of teacher salary under basic education, the other 20% or any additional funds we would look for program costs like AP science classes beyond basic education for STEM work or any funds required for music programs, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going all the way down to 12% here, as this slide shows, where's the other money picked up? And it's not going to be picked up from the state.
So I wanted to clarify, first, the 80% of the levy is committed to salaries. They consider that of that 80%, about 80 or 98% of it is basic ed support. The other part of that is paying for our staff in summer schools. It's paying for targeted assistance. It's paying for those sorts of things, and they recognize that. So that's what the 10% set aside would be when we got to the end of the transition. And that's why districts are offering that local, and what they're looking at is particularly is capping the amount of compensation that can be committed to salaries to set aside funding for other non-salary programs. So there hasn't been a sophisticated analysis of how this transition occurred. I just was on the phone with OSPI the other day to see how that happens, but it's definitely going to have to be aligned, coordinated, and it's going to have to be very intentional. You bet. So let's talk about levy volatility. I can move a little quickly through this section. So I think without going word for word, really what it boils down to, there's only 3 different options on the table on how to move forward with the levy structure. One, as I mentioned, is the current formula where OSPI makes some modifications to it, gets rid of the per pupil inflator, and kind of use the existing structure. The other 2 ideas out there are related to levy swap. On the House side, Representative Hunter had the levy swap, and his formula would change it to $1 per student FTE allocation. The Senate levy swap changes formula goes to $1 per 1,000 assessed valuation. So those are the only 2 other options out there right now, but the House and Senate budgets really violate what we're trying to do is create an equitable distribution of funds, and I think that's what you'll see in these next few projections. But I want to point out that these differences are significant, and these differences will affect how we estimate our long-term tax rate. So as the board moves through this year, trying to consider bond options for as early as 2018, we won't know the size of it until we can get closer to more like August. So just want to keep that in mind, that a lot is at stake on how that happens. So here's an example of the Hunter levy swap, and it shows for Bellevue, if everybody were to go out and be able to collect $2,500 a person, and you take their median house value and you take their median income, a resident in Bellevue would spend about 0.7% of their take-home income on average to support 2,500, but a person in Grandview would take 3.2% at a much lower salary rate. So this demonstrates the continued inequity with the local levies and the dependence upon them. The second version, I think, is even more different. It's the Senate proposal, and they're saying if we'll let you use $1 per 1,000 AV, and if you generate less than 1,500, then we'll increase that to $1.50. So in Bellevue, they could raise $2,700 per student. In Everett, it's $1,200, and Grandview is $337. So you can see the stark inequities that are with these other two proposals. I think generally districts want them to work with the existing model, reduce the dependency, because the smaller the levy is a part of the whole, then the less inequity that would occur. So what does that mean for Everett? The current model, this is basically how it works. And if you look at these, kind of the sample set, we're looking at the prior year's expenditures, state and federal. But look how significant that levy ghost funding is. And if you don't, ghost funding is the element within the allocation where, had they not discontinued I-738, 728, 732 for employee COLAs, and K-4 class size reduction, and it continued to be in place, our levy authority would be $28 million more than it actually is. So they've kept that inflator in there, and it's grown over the last, 6-7 years to be $28 million. You take that, and that per pupil inflator, as we talk about it, is sort of an inflation factor. So then you get our levy base. We get to collect 28%. Other districts collect more. Some collect less. And that creates a total levy authority. And then local effort assistance, you take that out, and it gives you what you can collect in a given calendar year. So it's 2017 is $54.49 million. 4 years ago, our voters only approved 53. So a lot of districts are in a position where the economy has outpaced what we asked our voters for 4 years ago. So when you take that and you say, okay, well, what happens with a 2017 levy? This one by column kind of shows the what ifs, as I would say. I'm trying to demonstrate how assumptions about your levy mean everything to these long-range projections. So if we were, the legislator were to increase that per pupil inflator to 4%, we'd have $3 million more to operate in 2017 or in 17-18 school year, as you might look at it. If they just took out the ghost money, that $20 million, we would lose $8 million. So that's how much that ghost factor means to us, and that you have to backfill it with new resources and not just eliminate it. You do both, and you're down $15 million in that year. If you dropped it all the way down to that 10% and took out the ghost without doing anything else, we'd have $40 million left. And if you take the OSP plan and you take the $4.4 billion and you say we have about 1.8% of the student population, and you pump it back into the system, the OSPI endgame, it could turn out okay, because we would have funded 90% of our salaries and we would still have $25 million as a levy. So we don't know. We have to start, as we as districts talk about, with what's the end game and how do we work our way to it. So finally, if we had Bellevue's levy authority today, we would have 13.75 more million with the exact same number of students. I never missed that opportunity. So when we go into these projection models, and this will only take a minute, they're fairly complex, but as we attach this presentation to our rating agencies so they can look at it before our call tomorrow, we want to point out that these are conservative and they don't demonstrate the best case scenario. We could make some assumptions that they're not going to cut the levies and they're going to provide a whole bunch of money and things will be great. And somewhere between the two is a likely outcome. They don't include new McCleary funding. They only include reductions of the local levy down to that 24% level, not down to the 10%. They assume that that K-3 calculation that we used for funding still includes all the music teachers, the PE teachers. They count on this stable enrollment growth that we have going, which is somewhere between 1 to 200 over time. And they also include controllable future costs. That's a word that Dr. Cohn added to this line, because we have choices in the future, and we're building them in, this overhead in the future, into the projection. We also don't expect a significant increase in federal funds. So when you look at the three different models, and without getting into great detail, the first model, in essence, says we're going to kind of have the status quo, as I state. We're going to have state funding increase as if McCleary didn't occur, not at a high growth rate, but at a maintenance level. We'll be able to keep our 28% levy. They're going to keep the ghost funding in. They're not going to change levy equalization. And we're going to add in the future as much as $4.6 million for new curriculum adoptions, tech facilitators, and to open a new elementary school. The next model is, in essence, very similar, but it assumes that beginning in 2019, because there were some bills proposed last year, they start going from 28 to 27, 26, 25, but again with no resources to backfill it. So it'll show a declining revenue. And the final model, Model C, really focuses on the cliff occurs, they don't do anything. In 2018, we dropped from 28 to 24, and then after that, it remains flat. So when you look at those three comparisons, this summary shows that in each instance, possibly the levy cliff model is different, that we're in a position that we're prepared, if we maintain sufficient fund balance, that really our concern is looking at 2018-19. We've built sufficient reserves, and it's unlikely levy cliff will occur, but if it does, we can respond. It's really from 18-19 and beyond that we're watching for, and we'll know more about as we move through the session. And when it concludes, we're confident that there will be more clarity about how long and when it will take to address and to what extent the legislature responds to McCleary. So in conclusion, I just included the same comments from our summary up front. We really are in a good position moving forward for the next 2 years. It's 18 and 19 that we really have to be prepared for. We're cautiously, plan for the worst and hope for the best. How the legislature responds significantly changes our projections, and the House and Senate proposals for local levy funding in a levy swap. The levy swap may be valid, but the mechanisms to change the levy actually make it more inequitable and will hurt Everett, at least in the per 1,000 AV. And you can see the volatility of how you can just take a few different elements of the levy formula and get a wide range of revenue projections. So I'm not providing clarity, but hopefully I'm setting the stage for us to have a discussion about along with Dana on our legislative platform for next year.
Thank you. That's a lot of little numbers you've included in there with big changes and differences. Directors, do you have any questions?
I have a question on slide 15. Columns. I just have one question. The OSPI endgame, you said will be in good shape. Is that because the salaries will be paid for? And so the $29 million loss down at the bottom won't be as significant?
Right. If you look at the difference between the actual state funding, even with the ghost, it's $180 million. So comparatively, if we had 89 more million in there to cover salaries, that would cover the salaries plus the additional funded units. And if they transition those local commitments that were paid with it, we could end up with a model that truly does enrich public education rather than just change how we pay for it.
So more accurately paid for the cost per student, and then our levy can go down because they're more accurately paying for our salaries and the cost for teaching, or however I want to word that better.
Right. So if 80% are levies committed to salaries and about 73% of it gets taken over by the state,
okay,
we're left with a much smaller levy in terms of matching existing needs. You layer in additional resources. You can talk about preschool. You can talk about other programs that truly enrich it. So this is just taking a snapshot quickly of saying, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, we have to focus on how these outcomes can benefit public education, but that's not where the legislature's going to focus this year. It's our job to keep wrapping around it and try to get them to look at the end game and see how you build towards it, rather than just saying, well, let's just put some money on the salary schedule. Let's just do that. Let's just do that. Their plan has to have, it should have a greater foresight structure to it.
Thank you.
This is just kind of a side note, but I was at a meeting earlier this week, and it was a meeting of the Hospitality Association for Washington. Used to be the Restaurant Association, but they merged. It's now the Hospitality Association. But it was a meeting to talk about their legislative priorities and that sort of thing. And it was interesting because all of their asks and wants are dependent on what the legislature is going to do with McCleary. So for us, it always seems like such a prominent and tangible thing and uncertain, but it's affecting everyone in the state, and I just was struck with that when I attended that meeting. So yeah, it's a crystal ball to be sure, and affecting many, many people.
I take a look at it. It may not, we're looking at the near term, the 16, 17, 17, 18, and then we're saying to ourselves, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the 18 and 19, there is still some concern. But what I look at is, as I'm looking forward out the 18, 19, 19, 20, as far as growth within the district, not in the, because of just general growth and because of the new elementary school and the possibility of a new high school going in. I'm talking about growth of programs. Programs, STEM programs, AP programs, those types of programs. We're hoping that we'll have authority through the levy to pick up those things because they may be outside basic education. Maybe they're not. Maybe the legislature is going to give us this great windfall because they are all within basic education and they change the definition. But what it tells me is that going that far out, 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, and 21, that the possibilities of growth, because our fund balance is going to be so low, it's going to be like 3 or 2%, minus 2.07% possibility, that additional growth or expectation of planning for growth that far out might be very difficult for us to do. Is that correct?
If it runs this course is kind of based upon what's in statute. And right now in statute is lowering it from 28 to 24. We don't have anything in the statute that provides us more McCleary funding. And so we're relying upon more favorable outcomes to accomplish the things you speak of.
More favorable outcomes as far as the state providing for us.
Right. The state fulfilling.
If the chances are they don't, then for additional growth that we plan for, looking forward thinking out 5 and 10 years, it's going to be difficult for us to plan for those.
Absolutely. If the state were not to respond, and if there's circumventing the relationship or the powers of the Supreme Court and it explodes,
I mean, there are certain things that we're looking for, as far as 21st century skills, early learning,
Sure.
AP program for a larger number of people, reduction of the opportunity gap, all of those things that we're forward thinking about.
It kind of demonstrates that we will always be, as probably any corporate or private sector, having to reprioritize what we're doing to accomplish the things that are most important. And what this is trying to demonstrate is that in order to do the things that we talk about, and we've been before you with a 6-year curriculum plan with these plans, we need the state to resolve this in a way that allows us to be successful at accomplishing them. We're not going to assume that it happens. We're going to be prepared for if it doesn't, we're prepared. And that's what we're telling our rating agencies tomorrow about fiscal stewardship. We're prepared for the worst, and we're going to hope for the best. And sometimes it's just 1 year at a time. But having this fund balance in this particular year is really important, given that you have to undo statutes to eliminate a drop of 4%. So that, and I think we all think to a great extent they will. So
I think your point is the point that the House Majority Leader made during a recent meeting that Dana and I had with him, and that was that this whole notion that we should simply reduce levies after the state picks up salaries and benefits for basic ed is a notion that ignores exactly what you're describing, which is both our continuing need to address the impacts of poverty with program in districts, which is about closing those gaps.
Or early learning, or
And early learning is one of the strategies for doing that, and a variety of challenges and strategies. But it also ignores this notion that school districts, after basic ed is taken care of by the state, have a variety of local programs, be they agriculturally related programs in Eastern Washington or parts of Eastern Washington, and marine-oriented programs for districts that are close to the Sound, or in our area, a whole host of programs that might be medically related, healthcare related, aerospace related, and count 3 more based on the goal that I'm working on with respect to some of the specialization within STEM and the being able to magnetize, if you will, some of the areas of the district with program. So your question is spot on with respect to the debate that rages between conservative and not conservative approaches, if you will, to funding schools. And I think that's going to be a debate.
Related to that, actually, I had a question of, I'm surprised to see that there's still the 2 proposals on the table from the Senate and the House, because it's not hard to see how they're not going to solve the equity problem. And what is the conversation happening going into this legislative session around adjustments, new models?
I think
you heard the conversation when Dr. Burke was here.
But is that something that I understood what he said, but I didn't understand it to be that was actually something that was being considered by either side.
I think he's helping you see what the middle ground is likely to look like based on the various studies and work groups that are operating and the governor's office perspective. This is, I think,
This is coming out of the work group that the governor assembled, or is it the task force that came out of McCleary?
You're talking about the second 2. Which one are you talking?
I'm talking about levy formula.
Okay, the levy swap formulas are one is Hunter's, and it was a part of the original one. The second one is a part of Senate Bill 6130, and it seems to be the most recent one. It was what they did the Senate listening tours about. And when you have a group of half the legislature or less thinking that there's enough money in the system, we just need to remix it, the levy swap makes sense, because then you don't have to raise taxes and we can do it. But the obstacle is all those political barriers between transferring that responsibility for what our contracts tell our educators do. But you also have to have buy-in from districts that are grandfathered at 30-some%. And so in order to make sure that they're willing to say yes, and they're willing to pay a little bit more than they do now, why some districts are winners and losers, they keep raising that bar to get them in. And once you raise it that high, then you have those great inequities, because you're basically saying, we're going to help a bunch of you, but then these guys can even raise further, because we can't knock them off the knees, and it starts with Seattle. So that's what they're trying to deal with, and Alan's talking about what that middle ground might be as they try to kind of move towards it. So we're saying, it can be a levy swap, but that's a net sum zero model, and that's what one half thinks. It'll get it all done, and we need to be held harmless, and we'll be the same way we are. We won't add programs, but it's
Complicated.
it's complicated.
Hard to make everyone
So
happy.
when somebody says, what do you think will happen? Ask them first. Well, I don't know. What do you think will happen? And then I'll give you my answer.
Yeah. Student representatives, do you have any questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If I might, I'd just like to thank Jeff and his team. This is a very complex set of analyses, and I've not seen as many variables entered into projections in a board presentation of this nature, and I haven't seen all the board presentations we made, I acknowledge that, but in terms of your being able to see the variety of what-if kinds of choices in essentially a PowerPoint, I think this prepares you very well for conversations that you're most likely going to have next month and the months that follow as the legislative session ensues. So I want to thank Jeff. And I want to thank the cabinet members who listened to this 3 times in a row.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to section 11.0, our second time period for public comments. Dr. Cohn, are there any public comments?
There are none.
Okay. That said, we will move on to unfinished business, and tonight we do not have any unfinished business. So we will move on to section 13.0, new business. We have a proposed revision to policy 4205, use of tobacco on school property, and Mr. Fleckenstein is going to fill us in.
Well, the health and safety of all of our students is our primary duty before any learning can take place. And with that in mind, I'd like to present to the board a proposed revision to policy 4205, use of tobacco or tobacco-like products on school property. Recently, engrossed substitute Senate Bill 6328 passed over the summer, which precipitated changes to existing RCWs regarding prohibition of tobacco and tobacco-like products on school property. WASDA's July update for the related model policy has drafted language regarding the behavior expectations of adults when on school property and within 25 feet of school or district property to refrain from the use of tobacco and tobacco-like products. Revisions to this policy for the board to consider include adding language that encompasses prohibition of tobacco-like products, including but not limited to liquid nicotine, vapor devices, nicotine delivery devices, and vapor products. This proposed policy revision does not change the existing policy's prohibition of use, possession, sale, or distribution of tobacco by adults on school and district property to students or other adults. For purposes of our existing school board policy, it now makes clear persons cannot be on adjacent grounds and use tobacco or tobacco-like products. They will need to be 25 feet away from school property, which basically means across the street, to smoke or vape. Revisions also make clear that employees and students may be disciplined for not following or enforcing this policy. The revised policy for the board's consideration has been reviewed by both the superintendent's cabinet and legal counsel prior to inclusion on tonight's board meeting agenda.
How does this affect open campuses such as Everett High School?
Anything considered district property, it would be prohibited to use.
So like in this, like on the sidewalks, is that considered the city property?
It's still considered within 25 feet of district property.
Okay, gotcha.
And I read the policy, but I don't recall what happens when other organizations use the facility. It does not matter, as long as it's just. Okay, great. Okay. Thank you.
And Snohomish County has recently changed, because they made the no indoor vaping rule, their signs to no smoking or vaping within 25 feet. Will we, I noticed we've got a sign out here that says no smoking, but I don't know if those are free signs or not from Snohomish County, but I think there is an opportunity with this policy update to maybe re-signage, because Snohomish County took that as on themselves.
And that would mean even at Memorial Stadium, and what about the Aquasats Stadium?
I would have to look deeper into the agreement that we have in place with them.
Most of those places don't allow smoking.
Yeah.
The
It's
answer
still
is no.
school property, I bet. Okay, any further questions?
I had a question. The policy reads, the second paragraph, the prohibition extends to all schools, grounds, district-owned vehicles, and within 25 feet of schools. But I understood you to say within 25 feet of school property.
Mhm.
Different from just schools. Like, when I read that, I think of the school building. Should it read within 25 feet of school property?
Yeah, we could, it might just be a small revision error. And there, the intent of, obviously, is for it to be within 25 feet of all district property.
District property, maybe district property.
Mhm.
Because when I read that, I thought 25 feet of the school, so I thought, okay, so people have to move 25 feet away from, like,
The building.
Building.
And be in the parking
Yeah,
lot.
I think that's a good,
The parking lot, they can't even do that
a
in the
good
parking lot.
point you're making.
Yeah, the parking lot is still considered to be district
district property, so yeah,
District property, right.
Mhm.
So,
property or something.
yeah. I was just wondering about the, like Memorial Stadium and the Aquasox Stadium. Is smoking allowed there or vaping? Because I know it's not smoking, but it is smoking, but what?
And that is one of the primary additions to this policy is about vaping, because it was just written only in regards to tobacco.
Yeah.
So now we're really looking at nicotine-based products as a whole. Mike?
I am familiar with the agreement with the Aquasox, and it prohibits the use of tobacco or tobacco products during the games, during the times that they use the facility.
In addition to the being prohibited at all other times, because at those times it's a school district. Or someone else is using it, like the college.
Oh, yeah.
So does this mean that if a district employee, if they want to, they have to leave the property and go across the street?
That's correct. Yep. Director Andrews, I would point out in that second paragraph, the wording is kind of unique, but also specific. And it says, this prohibition extends to all schools, district buildings, grounds, meaning district grounds, and district-owned vehicles, and within 25 feet of schools. So using that language, it would encompass district property as district grounds. It specifically calls out within 25 feet of schools to make clear we're really trying to protect the kids here. This is a community policy, not a student policy. We already prohibit use of tobacco and tobacco-like products with our student body, according to Board Policy 3240.
Do we provide smoking cessation programs for employees to help them?
Yeah, for employee assistance programs that we do if they need support. Also with our students who, we have drug and alcohol counselors on campuses as well, and can direct them to programs to help them refine and eliminate the use of tobacco, nicotine products.
I do appreciate the fact that we're becoming a healthier community, but my question is, what were we doing as far as employees that may still smoke and vape and all the other things that people do?
Yeah, and I know that healthcare, wise, I think is available to our employees if they choose to work with their healthcare provider for different methodologies.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at upcoming agenda items. Dr. Cohn, what are our upcoming agenda items?
Item 14.1 is your special meeting on November 1. It's a morning meeting, and the focus of that study session is social and emotional learning support, curriculum, instructional materials, et cetera, for students. And 14.2 is a regular meeting on November 8. You're going to receive a fairly substantial review of the instructional materials projections over the next several years, the various costs that would go along with that adoption schedule, and you saw the impact of that, am I not correct, Mr. Moore, in the projections that you just provided. So that's one of the reasons we included the wording, that there are indeed a number of controllable costs. If you choose not to do those things, or you choose a different level, for example, for the technology program, then those projection bottom lines could change substantially. And then you've got second reading on this policy, which we will go back and revisit and look to see whether we need to make some adjustments to those sections. And you've got a couple more that we believe will be ready for first reading. And then you'll have some out of endorsement assignment approvals and a Medic One grant, which, as I recall, is for
CPR.
CPR. Yeah.
With
Yeah.
firefighters.
Right.
You will recall we're trying to keep that meeting fairly short. We believe we may have some closed session material for you at that meeting. We're planning on pulling that together, but we're going to try to keep that meeting fairly compact because everybody wants to get to the election returns.
Okay. Well, we've come to close to the end of our meeting here. Now is the time for superintendent and board comments. Who would like to start this evening? We go right and then left. Amy?
Okay.
Well, last week was the Buff Puff games, and the senior boys won, but unfortunately the senior girls didn't. But it was pretty fun, and it was really exciting just to be part of the game. And last Friday, the Friday before homecoming, we had senior night for all the football players and cheerleaders. And I have to say that all the managers were really excited because we were actually included into something. So we had posters with our names on it, and they gave us flowers and everything. So it's just fun to see how the managers are finally being included as part of the football team as well. And finally, I realized it's my senior year because they gave us packages on caps and gowns and all the deadlines, and then all this information just came all at once. It's just so exciting for senior year, but I'd say I'm pretty scared for it too.
Thank you, Amy. With high school, high school and beyond last week, I was really reflecting with my husband on the fact that our daughter will be third generation college bound. Fingers crossed. But the fact that with the high school and beyond nights and with our goal of students being college and career ready, my mom, my dad, and my father-in-law all had their college paid for by military service. And so the fact that the military is an option for kids, my brother-in-law had military service straight to a mechanic shop like these gentlemen, and now does sales. But the different ways that our kids can get there once they graduate high school, and the young man that Jeannie presented tonight that was first in his family to graduate high school, that I take for granted the fact that my daughter will be third generation college bound, where we still have people in this community that graduating high school is still a family accomplishment. And the fact that we work so hard for each of those students impresses me every day. So thank you all so much. Oh, and for everybody watching and everybody here, please return your ballots. Please, please, please return your ballots.
I just want to say I had an opportunity to go to Cascade High School for the college and career, high school and beyond. I just thought that was wonderful. I learned so much. I learned that I could go overseas to get a mechanical engineer's degree or electrical computer engineering, computer science, civil engineering, and it would only cost me $8,000 a year. Yet, you know, room and board I'd have to pay for. But what an opportunity, because so many students think about going abroad for their first year and making a gap year. They could do that as well as go to school at the same time. So my focus is to, when you hear that to hand these things out to our students so that they can go abroad but still go to school and have somebody else help pay for that. I also found out you can go to Canada and actually, you know, your tuition and your room and board is all included in your same, the same cost for just $23,000 a year. What an opportunity. And then I found out people who came so far away from Alabama. You know, it's wonderful. You are doing such an outstanding job of showing the world to our students by bringing in people from other colleges and universities across the country, across the globe. And I thank you guys for your hard work. I really do. You guys are doing outstanding, and it's opening up a lot of doors for a lot of kids who never thought they could ever go to college or get prepared for the military, get prepared. Oh, there was one program at Boeing that if you go in your junior year, they will pay you up to $26 a month, $26 an hour, learning to be an intern, and then you get into their advanced manufacturing class after high school, and who knows what you would earn, more than your $26 an hour, and some students' parents aren't even getting that. So what an opportunity. Even if you don't go to college, you can still get into high-tech industry and be successful. So you guys are really doing an awesome job over there with high school and beyond. I really like the program, and I think you need to continue that, definitely.
Thank you to staff both here and now gone for wonderful presentations this evening. It's always appreciated. You guys do awesome work, and we get the benefit of just sitting here listening to all of it. Also, the early learning session last week, I think it was really an excellent session. And I also had the opportunity last night to attend a fundraising dinner put on by Housing Hope, and it was to raise fund for their early learning center. And so we heard some really interesting stories of their successes, and one of their successes was that 100% of their students tested to be kindergarten ready when they went to school. So that's just evidence of one of our community properties partners who's making our work even making it easier too. So thank you very much.
Okay, so this last Friday I had the opportunity to go to the ASB officer meeting with for Jackson High School with Dr. Cohn, and it was really interesting to see what all is going on behind the scenes at my own school. And so, like, as a student, even as a student, there's a lot of things that I don't really get to see and learn about how everything works in the background. And so I'm looking forward to the other meetings for the other schools in the upcoming month. And it's good because on the board we talk about a lot of things on the district level, but we sometimes don't get to really go very deep into individual schools. And so I'm glad that we also have the opportunity to go deeper from time to time.
Great. Well, I missed high school and beyond this last week because I went to book group. But, you know, we learned about reading, and that's important too. And I've also kind of been immersed in the college aspect these past few months, and so much so that I've actually learned to use Naviance. We keep getting away from the Naviance, and it's been very interesting to experience it as a parent. Some successes, a few frustrations, a few searching through the district website, trying to get help, just shy of picking up the phone and calling a few people saying, what do I do next? So it's been good. It's been it's given me a good perspective to understand how we're helping parents and how we can maybe also improve a little bit going forward. So, and then homecoming week is always a fun week when you have students around the house. Lots of activities, lots of interesting outfits going out the door in the morning, dances, and my older son's on leadership, so I get a real insight into all the activities that go on at school, and that's just really fun, the spirit and how they take on all those projects. So it's been a very full and fun week, and a very full and fun board meeting, so thank you to all of you. Oh, with that, we are, let's see, no closed or executive session tonight. So with that, we're on to 17.0, which is adjourn. This meeting is adjourned.